Hello, 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 everyone. We will start shortly. Come on in the room and get settled. We will start in just a moment. Hello, Chantel. Hello, Nicole. Hello, No Name. Thank you for joining. As you come into the room, hit the scale emojis. Let me know that you are here with me. Hit those scale emojis, everyone. Say hello when you come in the room. I set an alarm so I don't keep missing them. Looks interesting. Aw, I'm glad. I'm glad that you're here tonight. Hello, Aisha. We will start in just a moment. I just need to get grounded, need to get settled. I've had a weird day. It's been a tough day, but I'm here and we will get started very soon. I'm trying to calm down. I've had a rough day, so I'm glad that the music is calming. It's a little different from the stuff I usually play. I'm usually in here playing Flo Milli or the Clips or something random, but I'm deeply dedicated to keeping this space. So even though things are a little weird for me right now, I just wanted to make sure that that I continue to hold space and stay dedicated to these lives. We will go ahead and get started now. Thank you all for joining. You are here for happy hour. This is a session that we do about every other Thursday so that we can have conversation about pop culture topics and figure out what's going on in the zeitgeist and how we can relate to it, how we can use it to sharpen our discernment, bring discipline to our spiritual walk, etc., etc. So I am here tonight to talk about two very kind of popular and somewhat obvious examples of narcissistic mothers that have, thank you. I don't feel like it looks nice, but I will accept that, Chantel. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Two examples of narcissistic mothers that have been taking up a lot of space in the headlines in popular culture recently. And I thought it would be to our benefit to discuss them. I don't know how familiar you all are with like white pop culture, but this discussion around Victoria Beckham and her son, who has fallen out with her, has taken up a lot of space over the last month. At the same time, there's been this conversation that's been unfolding around Evelyn Lozada and her daughter Shanice in their podcast. They decided that it would be a good idea to interview Shanice's baby's father, the game. And it revealed quite a bit about Shanice, her lack of discernment, Evelyn, her ego, and how those things have led to this situation where you have this poor child. I know she's not a child, she's in her 30s, but the way she talks, the way she navigates life, the way she moves is very childlike, which is a symptom of narcissistic mothering, right? And we're going to talk about that tonight. For those of you who are tuning in, hello, I am Mambo Soleil. I am Coven Mother of Vision of Dawn Tour. I am the founder and facilitator of the Charm School Hoodoo Mentorship Program. Whew. I am your weekly reader, and I'm a dope bitch straight up out of Oakland. A dope bitch straight up out of Oakland. I think people forget that I'm a fucking dope bitch straight up out of Oakland. I've got people really, really playing my face around that lately today. And so, yeah, let's talk about this. I just want to, David, is that the son's name? Brooklyn is her son's name. Okay, I wanted to make sure that I got the names correctly before we start talking. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about narcissistic mothers in pop culture. Because the thing about narcissistic parenting, whether it's from a mother or a father, is that it does create blockages in the lives of their children. And those blockages don't go away. They show up in the child's adulthood. And I think that the situation with Brooklyn Beckham as well as with Shanice are perfect examples of how that happens, right? Slightly different cases, but they're very specific, right? I'm not here to diagnose anyone. So please know that everything that I say is alleged. Everything that I'm saying is from a third-party perspective, and it's all opinion-based. I do not know these people. Everything is alleged, right? So I'm not here to diagnose, but I am here to observe some patterns, and I am here to talk about what we all can learn and how we can benefit from recognizing patterns and what those patterns reveal to us, right? So first of all, let's talk about narcissistic mothering, what it is in particular, and why it shows up so loudly in celebrity situations, okay? When we are looking at narcissistic mothers, we are looking at mothers who value admiration from their child more than they do the process of nurturing, right? Narcissistic parents do not see their children as full autonomous beings. They don't see them as people. Because narcissists don't see people as people. They see people as a means to an end, right? And the thing that happens a lot with narcissistic mothers in particular is that they view their children as sources of supply, right? So because their children are sources of supply, they value admiration from their children more than they do the capacity to nurture their children, okay? And when this need for admiration from the child outweighs the desire to nurture and to raise the child, it creates struggles with empathy. It creates struggles with accountability. It also puts the children in a situation where they themselves are not allowed to outshine their parents, even for a moment, right? Anything that the child does becomes about them in ways that are deeply problematic and complicated, right? This is because the narcissistic mother is operating from ego and not from the heart, right? So they have a tendency to forget to love their child, to prioritize their child, and all they're focused on is how their child reflects them, right? How their child mirrors the positive aspects that they want the rest of the world to see about themselves. And this is deeply disconnected from the ancestral energy of what mothering is supposed to be, right? Mothers are meant to be a form of spiritual covering. Mothers are here to protect their children. They're not meant to be energy vampires. They're not meant to be in competition with their children. They're not meant to shine or steal the light from their kids, which is unfortunately what happens a lot with narcissistic mothers, right? Part of the reason why narcissistic mothering can be so loud and obvious in the context of celebrity is because fame rewards ego, right? It rewards image. It rewards control. And what happens a lot with celebrities and people who are in the spotlight, they treat their children as extensions of their brand, right? So in the instance of Evelyn, I'm a baddie, so of course my daughter's a baddie, right? I date famous men, so of course my daughter had a baby by a rapper, right? So when you see your child as an extension of a brand rather than part of your legacy, and someone that you nurture as an extension of your legacy and your lineage. That creates a lot of complications, right? And here's the thing, it's not just emotional harm. There are energetic distortions that flow through the children and follow the children well into their adulthood, right? And it can either create in a situation of Brooklyn Beckham, a situation where people have to literally go no contact in order to protect their ability to have a life, to build their own family, to experience adulthood fully. Or it can turn into the situation with Shanice, Evelyn's daughter, where they are emotionally stunted and their discernment is stunted. And that leads to them engaging in some difficult life choices that really prevent their progression, right? So that's why I thought it was really important that we talk about this tonight. Please let me know if you guys are familiar with both of these instances. Put in the comments section, are you familiar with the podcast episode that Evelyn and Shanice did with the game? Are you familiar with the situation with Victoria Beckham and her son going on contact with her? If not, say something in the comments so that way I know how to bring context and color to the conversation. Because I see the chat's not really moving. So Chantel says, I'm not. Okay. So I think let's start with the situation with Brooklyn Beckham. I think, yeah, let's start. No, actually, let's start with Evelyn. Let's start with Evelyn. Tiffany says, yes, they're familiar with the game. Adelaida, Mumbo, I am in the dark. Okay, I will do my best. Let's start with Evelyn Lozada, okay? Aisha, I'm familiar with both. Not a lot of detail, but I've heard what's happening. Okay, so we'll start with Evelyn, then we'll wrap up with Victoria and her son. Again, this is happy hour, so if you are sipping something, share, let us know. I am sipping Prosecco. It's Thursday, and I had a little left over from my veneration, so I'm sipping Prosecco. I know some of you guys may still be dedicated to dry January. I had to give up on that shit. So I am going ahead and letting myself have some Prosecco. Yes, Evelyn Lozada from Basketball Wives. Hey, Bertal, I didn't see the podcast, but I know who she is. Honey Jack is my drink. Oh, that sounds delicious. I don't think I've ever had Honey Jack. If I've had it, I don't remember. Okay. So we'll start with Evelyn. Evelyn Lozada became famous from the television show Basketball Wives. So she is a reality TV star. She was briefly married to the basketball player Chad Ochocinco. They were about to have their own reality show based on their marriage and their wedding. But he committed an act of domestic violence against her. They had a really big separation. It was a big deal. She went on to have a child by Carl Crawford, who is a famous former baseball player, I believe. He's also now a record executive, the owner of the company 1501, which is Megan Thee Stallion's former record label. Carl Crawford has not a good history of how he treats women, either professionally or romantically. So that fizzled out with Evelyn as well. Evelyn was known for being really competitive with the other women, having this really deep need to be the HBIC, being very, very violent with the other women, putting hands on them, throwing literal wine bottles at them. So she is not the most stable of characters, right? She has this daughter named Shanice. Gorgeous girl, absolutely gorgeous. Shanice literally looks like a doll. Beautiful, beautiful woman. Some would even say, if you see that beauty is symmetry and things of that nature, some would even say that Shanice is prettier than Evelyn, right? I'm not bringing that up to be shady. I'm bringing that up because, again, narcissistic mothers have a tendency to be deeply competitive, especially with their daughters, right? If they're not competitive with their own daughters that they birth, they can be competitive with their daughters-in-law, right? the women that their sons marry. And we're going to talk about that when we get to Victoria Beckham, because that situation is really, really weird, right? Evelyn has a daughter named Shanice. Shanice is in her early 30s. Shanice got pregnant by the rapper The Game. Okay? Now, that would not be salacious in and of itself, even though The Game is a horrible person. Known sexual predator. Like, his literal finances have been fucked up because there was a lawsuit that a woman that he sexually assaulted won. So he's millions of dollars in debt paying that lawsuit, right? He also, I don't know if you guys know who India Love is, but India Love is she was a young influencer at the time, and she was like about 19 or 18 years old. The Game filmed himself. How do I say this? Digitally stimulating this young lady in the park, right? and that went wide, that was spread all over the place. Now, mind you, The Game was in his late 30s when this happened, and this child was 18 or 19 years old. The Game has a history of, am I allowed to say fingering? Can I say that on YouTube? Yeah, he was fingering this little girl, this 19-year-old girl in a park. And the video of that went around. India Love, yes. The singer and the socialite. So The Game has a history of predating on very, very young, racially ambiguous Black girls, right? It's his thing. Part of the reason why the relationship between Shanice and The Game is so salacious is not just because he's a rapper. It's because he's friends with Evelyn. Some people believe that there was a sexual relationship between Evelyn and The Game at some point. They deny it, but based on the amount of flirtation that happened in that podcast, some people have a hard time believing that, right? Now, there's a podcast that Evelyn has with her daughter. I think it's called Drop the Low, and they decided to interview The Game. In that podcast, poor Shanice, she's trying to interview this man, and if you watch the podcast, if you've seen any clips of it, you hear her voice shaking. Her voice is shaking. She's fighting back tears while she's trying to talk about the way that this man basically gamed her. That's her language. You gamed me. Manipulated her, got her pregnant, and disposed of her. And how it's been very, very difficult for her to come to terms with the fact that even though this is somebody who has treated her poorly in terms of relationship, she is now tied to him in her language forever because they now have a child together, right? And the whole while that this girl is fighting back tears, her mother is sitting next to her giggling. I want you to think about that. Her mother, whose friend impregnated her daughter, disposed of her daughter, verbally abused her daughter, has mistreated her daughter, and has not been a present or good father, is sitting here in her face explaining why he does not plan to be a good man. And her mother is laughing. And even when her mother is asking The Game questions, her questions are very self-absorbed. How could you make me a grandmother before 50? I mean, I'm too young to be a grandmother. You made me a grandmother before 50. She also asked Skim, what did you think about the fact that the women on the show weaponized you impregnating Shanice against me? I mean, they threw it in my face that you got Shanice pregnant and that you're a felon. So no concern about how this man is treating her daughter. No concern around the fact that her daughter is literally sitting next to her fighting back tears, trying to get through this interview. It's all about her. It's all about how it represents her, how the pregnancy was weaponized against her. I'm not making this up, right? Total narcissistic mothering. Because she only sees Shanice as an extension of herself. And because Shanice is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. And again, some would say prettier than Evelyn, which Evelyn does not handle well. Evelyn does not handle women who may be just as attractive as her, if not more beautiful than her. She doesn't handle it well, right? You can tell that she's in competition with her daughter. She was flirting with that man. Every time the game said, well, you guys are both beautiful women, she's she's giggling and flirting with her child's baby daddy, right? Literally singling her out her daughter by not siding nor supporting. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was nauseating to watch. But it was a textbook example of what happens with narcissistic mothers. I've seen a lot of people go in on Shanice and saying, you know, girl, you're in your 30s, you should be embarrassed. Why would you choose the game? What's wrong with you? It's not uncommon for narcissistic mothers to use their daughters as bait for other men. So this is part of the reason why allegedly I don't have a problem believing, it's not a stretch for me to believe that Evelyn is herself attracted to the game. Because I've seen this before. I've seen narcissistic women, once their daughters become adults, treat their daughters like competition with men. If you've ever heard a story of a narcissistic woman whose daughter may have been molested or, God forbid, outright SA'd by their partner, and then they blame the daughter, it's because they see the daughter as competition. This is not uncommon. This is a thing that happens, and we're watching it play out between Evelyn and Shanice, right? Shanice shows up in the world like the product of a narcissistic mother. She's very soft-spoken. You can tell that she doesn't like to take up space. She whisper talks. She talks in code. At one point, she mentioned that she didn't like the way that the game treated her, and instead of pushing on the issue, she was like, I'm just going to leave that there, right? Like the people pleasing and the lack of desire to call people out on their behavior, to hold them accountable, that is all training that comes from being raised by a narcissistic mother. Because if your mother never held themselves accountable, you don't know how to hold people accountable in your romantic relationships. So I can understand why people are saying things like, oh my God, this girl's in her 30s, why would she make this decision? If it wasn't the game, it would have been another predatory man that orbited Evelyn's environment. Predatory men seek out women like Evelyn. They seek out women who thrive on male validation and who are in secret competition with their daughters. So if it wasn't going to be the game, it would have been another predatory man that she was friends with, right? Mother and daughters who, and here's another thing, like even when Shanice was younger, because I used to watch the show, I had to stop. I don't really watch reality TV as much as I used to for the health of my psyche. But I remember when Shanice was in her 20s, Evelyn would always say, oh, people think we're sisters. She's like my best friend, right? And narcissistic mothers position their daughters as peers a lot of times, right? I'm not saying that you shouldn't be friends with your mother. I was friends with my mother when she was alive. But I still understood that that was my mom. Like she wasn't dressing like me. She wasn't competing with me for men. There was none of that going on. But when you have a narcissistic mother, yeah, they dress like you. They treat you like a peer. They compete with you for male attention, right? So there ends up being a lot of subtle competition around youth, around beauty, around sexual desirability within relationships between a narcissistic mother and their daughter. And we see that being very, very present with Shanice. There are so many things that can be said solely by that. Laughing while your daughter cries. Yeah, giggling while your daughter is in tears. Giggling while your daughter is fighting to hold back tears around why she's hurt because she didn't plan to be a single mother from someone who doesn't care for her. And literally giggling while it's disgusting. Another thing that happens a lot in narcissistic relationships between the daughter and the mother, the child can become a therapist. They're your confidant, right? They become your emotional spouse. There's a lot of emotional incest that happens with narcissistic parenting dynamics. And we're really going to talk about that with Victoria in Brooklyn in a bit, right? Hi, Josette. It's good to see you. Um, so much of this commentary centers the mother's feelings. I've seen people say things like Evelyn should be ashamed of Shanice. Evelyn's not ashamed of Shanice because this was by design. This is what she had in store for her, whether subconscious or conscious. This is what she had in store for her, right? So let's talk about the spiritual impact on a child, right? There's a lot of confusion around self-worth. If you don't understand your identity outside of your mother and being your mother's reflection, it's hard for you to have a sense of self-worth, which is why I'm not shocked that she ended up dating somebody that was within her mother's social and dating pool, because it's common for the children of narcissistic mothers to not really have an identity outside of what's going on with their mother, their mother's social environment, right? There can also lead to a difficulty in trusting female friendships. If you don't know how to trust your mother, if your mother is in competition with you, if your mother is giggling at your pain, how do you expect to have relationships with other women that are healthy? You're going to assume that they're going to treat you just as badly as your mother is, right? There's also a lot going on with that blocked sacral chakra, right? So an inability to pick healthy partners, a lack of emotional safety, not having discernment so that you can pick partners or situations that are going to bring you emotional safety. No one looks at the game and goes, that's a man that's going to think about my feelings. No one looks at him. Between what he's done to his own past baby's mothers, between what he did to India Love, between what he did, the man's finances are fucked up because he has a sexual assault case. This is a known sexual predator, known felon. And only someone with a blocked sacral chakra who absolutely lacks discernment around desire and safety would choose someone like him. My heart actually goes out to Shanice. It goes out to her because her mother is her competition. And I don't see the evidence of her having a praying grandmother. I really don't. So, yeah, I just wanted to give that context because I think it's really, really easy to judge her and to be like, girl, what the fuck is this? But when you look at it from a psychological context around what happens when you're raised by a narcissistic mother, what else would have happened with her? What else could we have expected? The daughter seems to be sweet. She seems like a really sweet girl, right? Even the game mentioned that. He was like, you know, you are a good mom, and there's a sweetness and a patience to you that I'm grateful for. Because even when our son messes up things or does certain things, whereas I would spank him or go off on him, you're just like, no, baby, it's okay. We got it. Like, she is a sweet energy. I think that is authentically her personality. But again, when you are the daughter of a narcissistic mother, there is a tendency towards people pleasing and a fear of being unpleasant, right? Because if your mother is in competition with you, and if you're always trying to assuage your mother's anger, acquiesce to your mother's rage, and Evelyn is known for her rage. This is a woman that literally slapped her own vagina in an argument with somebody just because they said, oh, Jessica wanted me. Disaster, right? So she does seem like a really sweet girl, but I think that there's a lot of brokenness there. And I think that brokenness comes from the fact that how can you be whole when you have a mother like that, right? Anybody have any comments or any opinions about Evelyn and the game and Shanice? Go ahead and put them in the comments. I would love to see your thoughts and your feedback. While you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about Victoria Beckham. Do we all know who Victoria Beckham is? I'm going to assume that we all know who Victoria Beckham is, especially if you are a 90s baby. My hope is that you know who the Spice Girls are. And you know who Posh Spice is. She's gone on to marry David Beckham, the famous soccer player. She's known as a socialite and a fashion designer now. wealthy family. Okay. Um, she have her a run for her money with her racist ass. Oh, you're talking about Evelyn. Victoria Beckham is from the Spice Girls. Yeah, yeah, she's from the Spice Girls. That's Posh Spice. Absolutely. Um, so it has made headlines over the past month that Brooklyn Beckham, her oldest son, has decided to go non-contact with the family. And he literally a few weeks ago posted like literally a 6-page announcement about why he no longer wants to deal with his family and how they're very toxic, specifically highlighting the toxicity of his mother, right? About a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, he got married to this young lady named Alexa or Alexis Peltz. And the Peltz family is rich, right? They like have some, I think they own like Wendy's or some other food empire. They're billionaires. So their money eclipses the money of the Beckham family, which is another way you can piss off a narcissist. Do not have more money than a narcissist. Even if you have more money than a narcissist, don't let other people know that you have more money than a narcissist. That brings a rage out of them, right? And I'm not talking about just narcissistic parents, I'm talking about narcissists in general. Narcissists are obsessed with other people's money. I had to learn that the hard way. They're obsessed with other people's money, and they are obsessed with finding a way to fuck up other people's money so that they can have more than the other person, okay? Part of the reason why Brooklyn has decided to go non-contact from his family is because of what happened at his wedding to Alexa and what has ensued since being married to her, right? Basically, Victoria has been trash to his wife, has treated his wife badly. She went out of the way to try and sabotage their wedding, right? So she volunteered to design, and I don't remember her name is Alexa or Alexis, so I apologize. She volunteered to design Alexa's wedding dress, and then when it got down to the wire, she just decided she wasn't going to do it. So Alexa had to scramble last minute and find another wedding dress. They had Mark Anthony, Nicola Peltz. I'm so sorry. I done renamed this girl. I done called her Alexa. Nicola Peltz. Thank you so much. She was supposed to design her wedding dress. She backed out last minute. So Nicola had to go and get another wedding dress, which ended up being beautiful. From the pictures that are online, I thought she looked gorgeous. She mistreated Nicola all the way up until the day of the wedding, according to Brooklyn. When it was time for the first dance, Mark Anthony, the singer Mark Anthony, one of my favorite singers, made a statement like, I want to, let me give a shout out to the most beautiful woman in the room. And that should have been a call for Nicola to stand up because it's her wedding, right? But no, Victoria stood up. And Victoria took over the first dance that was supposed to happen between Nicola and Brooklyn. And not only did she take over her son's first dance, from his reports and from other people's reports, she was inappropriate, like grinding on him, nuzzling into his neck. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being at somebody's wedding and instead of them allowing their wife to have the first dance, their mother shows up and starts gyrating on their son and nuzzling their neck? Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Boy moms have emotionally incestuous behaviors. We see all these clips on TikTok of women literally straddling their sons, women saying that they're gonna fight their son's first wife, and then the son is like 4 years old, right? Boy moms can be very narcissistic, right? Boy moms can be very narcissistic. And I'm not saying that every woman that has a male child is narcissistic. I know a lot of people that have male children. My best friend just had her first son, but she's not a boy mom in that toxic way, right? I'm talking about the women who treat their sons like emotional husbands, emotional spouses. There's a lot of emotional incest that happens between mothers and children, right? So, of course, Nicholas sees this and runs out of the wedding crying, right? Because what the fuck is this? There were rumors that this happened, but Brooklyn then confirmed it in this post where he's saying, I'm going in contact with my family. I don't want to talk to them. I'm not about to do all this performativity. I don't care how many stories they plant in the media. I don't care how much money they spend on damage control. I want nothing to do with them. Okay? That is insane. But according to his reports, this is something that he has dealt with most of his life. His mother, and to a certain degree his father, having a controlling dynamic over who he gets to connect with, his image, his reputation, and he's sick and tired of it, right? So, whereas it's a lot more obvious with Evelyn and her daughter, it has been much more covert and quiet and hush-hush with the Beckhams over the last few years. I think a lot of this would have just stayed in the realm of rumor had Brooklyn not got fed up, decided to go no contact, and made a public statement about it. I'm proud of him too. Absolutely good for him. Yeah. They say a mother's first son is her first true love. That's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. I hope that's not true. Oh, that's not true. That's disgusting. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about how this shows up within their dynamic, right? In narcissistic families, there is an extreme emphasis on appearance and being able to keep up appearances. Children understand very, very early that their image is a reflection of their parents and that they have to be perfect in order to reflect their parents' image and to make their parents happy. And when they fail, there is discipline, right? If they do not engage in brand safe behavior, again, remembering that when it comes to celebrity narcissistic parents, the children are an extension of the brand. They're not autonomous beings, right? So they have to engage in a lot of brand safe behavior. So the children are praised for their performance, not their emotional authenticity. There's also a lot of infantilization that happens as a result of that, right? So they don't get to be grown men and women. They're always babies. They're always kids, right? David Beckham recently came out and said, you know what? Kids make mistakes. And at some point, this is going to blow over because kids make mistakes. Brooklyn Beckham is like 25, 26. That's not a kid. That's not a kid. He's a married man. He has a wife. He's a husband. It's not a kid. But narcissistic parents will always infantilize their children because their children don't get to grow up. They're always babies, right? Babies are dependent on us. And they're not capable of seeing their children as autonomous beings who aren't reliant and aren't depending on them, right? So, love is tied to obedience, right? Love is tied to obedience and your ability to be a proper representation of the family structure. Love is not authenticity. Love is not unconditional. You are only loved in how you represent the parental and the family structure, right? And so what's the spiritual impact on that for children? Well, there's a fear of failure, right? A constant fear that if you don't perform, if you don't affirm the perfection of the family or the perfection of the parents, that you will lose your family's love, which is part of the reason why I'm proud of Brooklyn, because he just checked out of that whole situation and said, I'm going to focus on the love from my wife, right? There's also a lot of anxiety around self-expression. So again, similar to the situation with Shanice, you show up smaller. You don't make big risks. You don't allow yourself to explore your own identity because you are afraid that if you express yourself authentically and it displeases your parents, you will lose their love, right? There's also a severe disconnection from your intuition. You don't trust yourself, right? So again, going back to Shanice, we can judge her for not having discernment, but where the fuck was that baby gonna learn to trust her intuition? Where was she gonna learn that? And so with Brooklyn being like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I really think that marriage saved him to a certain degree, right? And this happens a lot. Narcissistic parents don't like their in-laws. They will sabotage their children's relationships and marriages. Because if you have somebody that loves you and who is honoring you for being autonomous and who is showing you what it looks like to have a healthy identity and to be an adult, the parents are going to see that as a threat. So they will go out of their way to fuck up a marriage. I've seen it over and over again. I've had to do spiritual work for people who have narcissistic parents and were trying to fuck up their marriages. It's not uncommon. It's way more common than you think, right? So, and then again, these people tend to have blocked throat chakras. They're afraid to tell the truth. They're afraid to use their voice. Again, going back to Shanice, my heater is making a lot of noise, forgive me. They're afraid to use their voice. So like Shanice speaking in that whisper, that baby talk, right? That's because of the blocked throat chakra, a fear of authenticity, a fear of even your own literal voice, okay? I'm gonna put my Evelyn said her grandmother treated her like shit because she was dark. So she has to be carrying that wound. Part of adulthood is healing our wounds, you know, so that we don't spread them to our children. Hold on, I'll be back in 1 second. All right. Thank you so much for being patient. I appreciate that. That sounds like some generational issues. Absolutely. That is a generational issue. That really is. And here's the thing. I have a soft spot and a soft heart for people who deal with generational curses like colorism, like competition amongst men and things of that nature. But part of our responsibilities as adults is to recognize the generational curse and to break it. And Evelyn has not broken it. Evelyn is a colorist. She calls black women monkeys. Like, you know what I mean? Like she has absorbed and inherited a lot of that colorism herself and has perpetuated it, right? So it's hard to feel bad for her. But again, let's talk a little bit more about Victoria and Brooklyn, because I think that this is what he did was brave. Very, very, very brave. Very, very brave. And I think that we are going to see more children of narcissistic parents, especially when they get into adulthood and when they have experiences that highlight those blockages for them. I think that we're going to see them choose the life outside of their parents and outside of their family, right? Because that's part of adulthood, fighting for the family that comes from you, that you create, and not the family that created you. And learning that that is a part of your responsibility as a being on this planet, right? But I want to talk a little bit about both cases and talk about the spiritual blockages that the children of narcissistic mothers carry, okay? A common blockage is ancestral guilt. She calls black women monkeys. She called OG or OT, whatever that lady from Black Basketball Wives, she called her a monkey. When the woman said, "Oh, Jessica wanted me," she called her a monkey. I'm sorry. I don't know why the way she said it is so funny to me. And I repeat that all the time. "Oh, Jessica wanted me." But yeah, children of narcissistic parents will carry a lot of ancestral guilt. And that's because they feel like they owe their lives to their mothers. That's not a healthy feeling to have, right? And there are other instances. It's not just Victoria Beckham. It's not just Evelyn Lozada. I see this. I don't watch a lot of sports, but my ex, fuck him, used to watch a lot of sports. And whenever you see a lot of these athletes talk about their relationships with their mothers, right, especially if their mothers were really involved in getting their career off the ground, they talk about their lives like they owe their mothers everything. That's why they have a hard time having healthy relationships with women, because in their mind, all of the care and the obligation that they should be pouring into a wife, they pour into their mom, right? I remember hearing the comedian Marlon Wayans say, "My mama is my number one girl, and that's probably why I've never gotten married." That's ancestral guilt. Feeling like you owe everything to your mother, that your success, even your silence, right, to a certain degree, you owe that to your mother, that your life doesn't belong to you. That is ancestral guilt. Feeling like your life is not your own and that you owe everything to your parents and that you don't get to have a life. You just get to have a life where you are a reflection of this other person. That's ancestral guilt, okay? There are also some crown chakra distortions, right? So we're talking a lot about the chakras that get fucked up when we have narcissistic parents. And crown chakra distortion happens a lot, right? Because there's a confusion between your divine authority and maternal authority. You don't know how to trust yourself. You don't know how to move from Ori. You don't know how to stand in your own intuition. So you will ignore you literally teach yourself, or you are groomed to numb your relationship to your own intuition because you have to value the authority of that narcissistic parent over your own intuition and discernment. That is a crown chakra distortion, okay? We also see a lot of heart chakra armor in distortion, right? So these are people that have a lot of difficulty with receiving love without suspicion, right? I tell The few narcissistic boy moms that I used to know, I would tell them all the time, and one of them I fell out with this over. I tell them all the time, don't tell your sons no woman is going to love you like I love you. Never tell your sons no woman is going to love you like I love you. Not only are you ruining your son, but you are creating a lot of heartbreak and emotional violence for every woman that they are going to date after that. Okay? Because that heart chakra distortion creates a difficulty with them being able to receive love without suspicion. They see every woman as a potential competition with their mother instead of seeing the women that they date as potential life partners. Okay? It also creates a lot of insecurity within the root, so you never really feel safe unless you are performing, right? That distorted sun card energy. You have to engage in toxic positivity. If you're not perfect, you can't be loved, right? That's a root chakra issue, okay? The mother's unmet ego needs get attached to the child's aura. So literally, their whole aura ends up being defined by whether or not they are satisfying the needs of their narcissistic mother. And this creates a cord that's based on control instead of care, okay? And this shows up in their adult life in really concrete ways through overachieving but under-receiving. It shows up in terms of how they don't trust mentors. The people who are raised by narcissistic parents do not trust mentors. The second that they come across an adult or a mentoring figure who is giving them wisdom that is in opposition to the shit that their parents say, they will cut off ties, they will fall out, right? They do not trust mentors, elders, or spiritual leaders. It also leads to a fear of being seen without being judged. So they will either hyper-perform a fake identity in the context of what Brooklyn has claimed he's been forced to do over the years, or in the case of Shanice, they play small. They play small, they talk small. They don't take up space, right? Those are all ways, are all wounds that are the result of, that show up in the adults that have been raised by narcissistic mothers. And then again, this is why I say I wasn't surprised that Shanice ended up with the game, because one of the main things that happen is that they attract a lot of narcissistic partners or friends. Think about the people in your life that have a lot of friends that don't fuck with them. Think about the people in your life where you look at them and you're like, why do you have these friends that talk bad to you, that neg you, that don't show up for you? They had parents that talk bad to them, that neg them, that don't show up for them. So of course they're going to accept that in their friendships. Of course they're going to accept that in their partnerships, because that's what they got from their parents, right? So these are the kind of things that show up in your life, right? Now, again, we are having this conversation not to diagnose people, but to look at the patterns. And I mentioned the friendship thing because if a lot of us are honest with ourselves, even if we were not raised by narcissistic parents, our partner may be a narcissistic parent, right? We may have friends that engage in narcissistic parenting. I just told you guys, I've fallen out with friends before. I've lost friendships for calling them out and saying, hey, you're going to raise your child to do And I'm sorry. I'm going to say the thing because I have an obligation to protect children. You grown. So if you can't hear the feedback and if you want to get mad at me, then we can fall out. That's fine. But you're not going to sit here and do weirdo shit to your baby and set them up for a lifetime of trauma without me saying something, right? So let's talk about what we can do to make sure that we don't replicate these patterns in our lives and our relationships and our parenting, okay? One of the key things we need to remember is that honoring our mother does not equate sacrificing our soul. You can honor your mother without sacrificing your soul and your authenticity. And it's really important that we understand that individually, and that if we are raising children, that we allow them to believe that we teach that to them, right? Letting them have their own identity, not making them feel that they have to sacrifice their needs in order to be in allegiance to their parents. That's deeply important, right? You have to be able to love your mother and release their control, especially when you become an adult. There's no reason why you should be 25, 26, 33 and dependent on your mother's validation. You're going to love your mother, yes, but not being able to make life moves without them being connected to your mother, that's a little sad, right? And that's a pattern that needs to be broken. So again, if this is something that shows up in your life, I definitely recommend that you do cord cuttings, right? Sometimes you got to do cord cuttings with family members. It just is a thing. I've done them for people, right? Also, reparenting your inner child. Whatever the safety is that you were denied from your narcissistic parent, give that to yourself, right? If you have friends or people that you love, you may want to recommend reparenting to them so that way they can rewire what's going on in the theater of their mind that tells them that they're not safe, that they don't get to be themselves, that if they're authentic, that they won't be loved, right? Any kind of ancestral work that is focused on healing the health within the maternal lineage, that's going to really help people in terms of breaking away from patterns around narcissistic mothering, okay? Here's the thing. Society worships mothers. One of the most beautiful things you can be in the world is a mother. It is an anointing and a gift. But when we show up in the world in ways that are unhealed as mothers, we can abuse that gift, right? That's why I'm really glad that somebody pointed out that, Evelyn's grandmother was a colorist and that was used to abuse her. I hear you. But part of Evelyn's responsibility as a grown woman, especially as a mother in the world, is to heal that wound so she doesn't replicate it out in the world, especially on her daughter. And let's be real. Colorist women, light-skinned women who inherit colorism or who internalize colorism will go into narcissistic partnerships because they believe that their preference position will keep them protected. I think somebody like Shanice thought to a certain degree, well, I'm pretty, I'm a baddie, I'm Latina. Why would he mistreat me? And now she's learning that fat meat is greasy, right? So our responsibility as mothering figures is to heal ourselves so that we don't wound the next generation, okay? We can love mothers and hold them accountable. We can love mothers and hold them accountable. Accountability is love. And that's why I applaud Brooklyn for what he's doing, Women are capable of harm. We are. And we have to have those conversations. Women are capable of harm. We commit acts of harm with one another by seeing each other as competition. We commit acts of harm by not respecting the marriages of our adult sons, which is what Victoria Beckham did, right? So part of being woman-centered is not thinking that women should be worshipped to the degree where they're not human. No, we have to hold each other accountable. And we have to hold ourselves as mothering figures accountable, and we have to hold other mothering figures accountable, right? I think that pressure to protect the mother at all costs can be heightened with Black and brown women because there is a lot of societal attack against Black and brown mothering. But in-house, check ourselves in-house so that way the society doesn't see us as crazy, right? So I hope that this conversation was helpful. I hope that I'm highlighting some things that get you all to thinking about dynamics that you may see in your life or reflected through other people that you know. The way that people are raised impacts the kind of adults they become. And it's one thing to judge somebody, especially when you see a grown woman making poor relationship decisions, but you really got to ask yourself, how did they get there? And if you're sitting there with a mother who's giggling and blushing because your baby father is calling her a baddie, and she's laughing at you because you're holding back your tears, of course you don't have a whole lot of discernment. Of course you don't have healthy female friendships. Healthy female friendships could have probably protected her from a lot of what she went through with the game. But where would she get them from? Look how her mother treats her. How could she trust other women? Right? I hope that these things are helpful for us to think about. I hope that this gives us a lot of reflection and opportunity to think about what we don't want to replicate, okay? Every week when I do happy hour or when I do astral hour, I offer a reading, a discounted reading, an 11/11 reading to the public. And most of us don't have narcissistic mothers, so I didn't want to do like a narcissistic mother reading. But even if we don't have narcissistic parents, we probably have something going on that has made it hard for us to really stand in our own identity. So what I have here is the Reclaiming Self reading. And this is a reading that really helps us in terms of thinking about how we've been shaped by something or someone powerful, right? So this is a spread that really looks at how that influence may have affected us positively or negatively, and how our spirit needs to respond to that now. So if you would like a Reclaiming the Self reading, go ahead and send your love offering to my Cash App or my PayPal. Both are scrolling below. While people are doing that, I'm just going to give you guys a few updates about things that I'm working on. So I did ask you all last week, if I go live on a Saturday, will you attend? So this week you will get both happy hour, which is happening now, and we will do astral hour Sunday at 3 p.m. There is a full moon coming up on Sunday. So on Saturday, I'm going to go live at 3 p.m. to do astral hour, to talk about the full moon as well as some other astrological transits that are coming up. If you are free on Saturday in the afternoon, please make sure you drop by. Just to get a little bit of wisdom, because I love astral hour. I think that the conversations we have in astral hour are quite brilliant. I think that the wisdom we share really sets you all up to understand how to navigate the transits. So 3 p.m. on Saturday, I will be going live. There are 10 days left to book your forecast readings. If you have not already booked your 2026 forecast, throat getting dry, gotta wet my whistle. If you have not already booked your 2026 forecast reading, I strongly encourage you to go ahead and do so. They will not be available after February 8th. So please book it while you have the opportunity to. It will not be around forever, okay? There are two versions, a full version that comes with a natal chart reading, a general natal chart reading. So if you've never got a birth chart reading, this is a great deal because it's discounted heavily. You get a full natal chart reading. You then get an assessment of the important transits for you to be aware of throughout the year based on the placements in your natal chart. And then you get 4 tarot spreads that highlight the energy of the year ahead. Now, if you are not interested in getting the natal chart work, you can get the mini version of the forecast, which is just the 4 tarot spreads plus a 5th question of your choosing, okay? The links to those are in the description. Rich Spirit Prosperity Ritual happens February 16th through the 19th, and the deadline to sign up for that is February 13th. Sorry, the Prosecco made me burp. So if you know that you would like to, if you have some big financial goals you want to take care of in 2026, I strongly encourage you to enroll in Rich Spirit, okay? I've seen people get homes, get new jobs, get promotions, get all kind of support by participating in Rich Spirit. It is my baby. I've been doing it literally since 2022. I'm a huge Kendrick fan. I was inspired by the song Rich Spirit. I received a lot of downloads after listening to that song on repeat. And 2 months after Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers came out, I created the Rich Spirit Prosperity Ritual, and I've been doing it ever since. So literally, this will be the 4th year that I've been offering it, and it is transformational. There's 5 different levels. So there is accessibility at a lot of price points and ranges. Join the WhatsApp link to learn more about it if you are interested. If you know that you have energy that needs to be moved and it's not necessarily financial, February 15th, I will be doing a collective cord cutting ceremony. That will happen between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday, February 15th, okay? So we just talked about cord cutting as a necessity in terms of breaking the ties of certain parental or ancestral linkages that don't serve you, right? If you know you need help with that, consider joining the cord cutting and blockage removal ritual. That is going to be February 15th, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Okay? So those are updates on everything that I'm working on. What platform? What platform are you asking about, Nicole? Let me know what you mean. I don't know what you're referencing. Josette, I see that you sent your love offering. Thank you. Tori, I see that you sent your love offering. Nicole, I see that you sent an offering. Would you like a reading as well? Let me know. I'm going to start with Josette. And then, Nicole, if you'd like a reading, I will do you after Josette. And then I will do Tori. And then if there's anyone else that would like a reading, just send your love offering and I will get to you. I'll be here on Saturday for Astral Hour. It'll be here on this channel at 3 p.m. Okay? So we will be here at 3 p.m. on Saturday. Yeah, just make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Okay, so Nicole, I will do Josette, then Nicole, then Tori. If there's anyone else that would like a reading, go ahead and submit your love offerings, okay? So let me pull up my format just to make sure that I'm doing this correctly. I got you, Chantel. Thank you, Chantel. Thank you so much. Ancestors, angels, Cinemaster, spirits to walk with me. What wisdom does Nicole need about reclaiming herself, reclaiming her identity? What are the influences, whether it's people or experiences that have influence over how she moves? How have they shaped her identity? What does she need to release? Any wisdom shared is deeply appreciated. In the position of the influence, what influence has most shaped how you show up in the world? And this can be a cultural influence, an authority figure, anything. But this card is going to show basically what has the biggest influence over you. And we have the Eight of Wands, right? So you had an influence from probably a male identified elder, and again, it can be a woman, but male identified, where you feel like you had the influence of being made to feel like you had to hyper perform for love, right? Eight of Wands is stay ready, so you don't have to get ready. It's constant movement, and it's like you got the influence and the message very, very early that if you weren't always doing or hyper performing, that you wouldn't be loved, that you wouldn't be seen, right? In the position of the internal response, which talks about how your spirit has adapted to this influence for better or for worse, you don't like to share your feelings. There's a part of you, and again, going back to this need to hyper-perform for love, you probably got the message from this influence that feelings are inconvenient, right? And that nobody has time for that, right? There's a lot going on. There are things that are more important than your feelings. And because of that, you learned to keep your feelings hidden. Feelings are private things. Not only are they private things, they're somewhat shameful things, right? So the more that you can keep your true feelings in the dark, the better it is for you, right? In terms of the self-reclaimed, right? How it is that you get back your power, the aspect of yourself that's ready to be expressed more freely. We have the King of Wands, Josette. We have the King of Wands. So for you, you have to get really comfortable with taking up space. You have to really adopt a self-belief that does not allow you to hide from other people. And not only does it not allow you to hide from other people, you feel comfortable bragging on yourself. The King of Wands is a little bit of a braggart, right? They're always enrolling other people in their vision. They're so passionate about who they are and what they have going on and what they're working on that they will literally enroll people into their support, right? They will talk you into being a fan. So for you, this is about really calling back your confidence, okay? Let me know if that resonated with you, Gisette. Let me know if that resonated with you. We will do Tori next, and then we will do Nicole, and then we will do Chantel. Ancestors, angels, ascended masters, spirits that walk with me. Elevated ancestors. What wisdom does Tori need about reclaiming the self? What is the thing or person, situation that has impact and influence over her? How does that shape how she shows up? What does she need to do to reclaim her authenticity? Any wisdom shared is deeply appreciated. That came up in your forecast too. Yeah, so there's synchronicity there. Absolutely, there's synchronicity there. Yeah. Josette enjoyed her forecast. It was a beautiful experience. I just recently did it for her. If you have not already gotten your forecast reading, please go ahead and purchase and book it. It will not be available after February 8th. Okay? Okay. Ooh. Tori, in the position of what influence has most shaped how you show up in the world, your elders were very fear-based thinkers. They were not risk takers at all. They were not risk takers. In fact, they were people that feel that risk taking is irresponsible and that it's dangerous. And because of this, they may have lived good lives, but very restricted lives, right? Very hesitant lives. They don't trust risk, and they are people that reject their fear of risks into their own reality, right? They see the world as a dangerous place. So this is something that's had influence over you in terms of not feeling safe to take risks, to move in a particular way. There's a paranoia that things are not going to work out in the best way for you if you're not perfect, right? Now, in the position of the internal response, how your spirit has adapted to this influence, we have the Page of Cups. Page of Cups is somebody that's highly intuitive, but they feel safer in the imagination, and they engage in a lot of imaginative escapism, right? Spiritual and imaginative escapism. So, and remembering also that the Page of Cups is the card of the creative. They're the dreamer. They're the artist. So how that shows up for you in your life is that even though there's a deep well of creativity within you, you feel safer fantasizing about it than you do actually executing on it, right? Again, going back to this understanding that risk-taking is not safe. It causes you to live a life of escapism through the imagination. So a lot of the creative art and creative capacity goes dormant and is wasted on low-key maladaptive daydreaming, right? In terms of the aspect that's going to allow you, the aspect of yourself that you have to embrace that will allow you to express yourself more freely, we have the Magician. You have every tool at your disposal to do whatever it is you want and to live the life you want, to create the life you want for yourself. But if you never fully believe it, and you don't move and operate within the alchemy of that, it will never happen for you. Okay? So I would strongly encourage you to really work on your self-belief, your self-confidence, to really get to the point where instead of operating from a fear that you can't take risks and that if you do take risks, it's all going to end in disaster, into a belief that you can do and will do any and everything that you want. Okay? Let me know if that was helpful. Let me know if that resonated with you. Nicole, I got you next, and then we're going to do Chantel. If there's anyone else that would like a Reclaiming the Self reading, go ahead and submit your love offering. Submit your love offering, and then I will get to you after Chantel, okay? Tori, let me know if that resonates. Ancestors, angels, ascended masters, spirits that walk with me, motivated ancestors. What wisdom does Nicole need at this time about reclaiming herself? What were the influences over her that shaped her understanding of self? How does that show up in terms of how she's adapted to those understandings? What will allow her to embrace her true authentic identity? Any wisdom shared is deeply appreciated. I have a fear of my family going off on me for taking risks. Here's the thing. There's the life that they gave you, and then there's a life you create for yourself. And a part of adulthood is focusing on the life you create for yourself. Focusing on the family that you are going to create from you, not the family that you came from. And at some point, you got to make that choice and that decision. Some of us do it way too late. Some of us do it never at all. But I encourage you while you're still young to make that choice, okay? We have Death card in reverse as your first card, Nicole. And when this talks about the influence that has most shaped how you show up in the world. I'm not going to cry. You had elders and people around you. It's not like they weren't aware of what their deficits were. They had a hyper awareness. Life showed it to them. Their relationship showed it to them. But because of their own ego and because of their fear of change, they allowed their worlds to stay small instead of transforming and adapting and allowing themselves to become different people, right? So in watching them be that way, you learned that not only is it not safe to be different, but there's no reason to be different, right? That difference in transforming and going beyond your circumstances was somehow like wrong or bougie or stuck up, right? The internal response. How has spirit adapted to this, for better or for worse? It allowed you to keep an environment for a really long period in your life that reflected that, right? Five of Pentacles is a card of scarcity mentality, poverty mentality, and having people in our circle or in our environment that move that way. So you probably in the past had lovers that mirrored elders or friends that mirrored elders, right? It's like a playing small out of a fear of having more, if that makes sense. Townies, yes. In the position of what you need to do in order to, why my phone won't open up? That's my code. What's going on? It's my code. It's always been my code. Okay, sorry. In terms of what you need to do to reclaim yourself, the aspect of yourself that is ready to be expressed more freely, this is a very interesting card. We got the Nine of Swords. Nine of Swords. Understanding that your past is your past so that you don't lose sleep over it. You don't lose peace. It's okay to be different. And it is what it is. And if you constantly carry an energy that there's some sort of shame or something wrong with transforming past your circumstances, you will continue to lose peace over the fact that you don't reflect the people you grew up around. That's not anything to lose sleep over. It's okay, right? So leaving that nightmare of not fitting in the past is how you reclaim yourself. It is what it is. Those people are living out their own nightmares, their own stagnation. And if that's something you have to step in order to be accepted by them or to be one of the folks, you don't need it, right? So that's what I'm seeing. That's what Spirit has to say. Let me know if that resonated with you. Chantel, let's get to you. If there's anyone else that would like a Reclaiming the Self reading, go ahead and send your love offering now, and then I will get to you after Chantel. Ancestors, angels, ascended masters, spirits that walk with me, and elevated ancestors. What wisdom does Chantel need about claiming herself? Give us insight into the influences that may have distorted how she sees herself, how it shows up and how she's adapted certain messages, and what she needs to do to release those messages. Any wisdom shared is deeply appreciated. You're very welcome, Nicole. What influence has most shaped how you show up in the world? Queen of Pentacles, you had a female elder. In her alignment, this is the working mother, healthy work-life balance, really good alignment with her own sensuality. But in her misalignment, she can be a very greedy, money-hungry, status-obsessed person. So if not an aunt, another female elder in your life who was very status obsessed, very judgmental, very much evaluating and judging people by what they had and equating material possessions with individual worth, right? Yeah, that can be a very unpleasant influence to have over your life, right? In terms of the internal response and how your spirit adapted to this influence, again, very similar to another young lady earlier. I don't remember who this card came up in the same position for, but it made you very guarded with your feelings. You do not want to be vulnerable with other people. Whether you're struggling or doing good, you don't want people to see you. It really taught you that emotions are hidden, that if something is not perfect, or not appropriate in terms of status and recognition, that it needs to be hidden. So you have a really severe discomfort with vulnerability and feelings. Maybe not so much other people's vulnerability and feelings, but definitely with your own, okay? In the position of how you reclaim the self and the aspect of yourself that is ready to be expressed freely, very similar to Tori. You got to take back your power. You have to really own that you are capable of living whatever life you want, and that your life will be pleasant and and not just satisfactory, but pleasurable if you live authentically, if you stand in your power, if you use all the tools at your disposal to move through life the way that you want to, right? So that's what I'm seeing for you. Let me know if that resonates with you. All right, I don't see anyone else who would like a reading. That's totally fine. I will offer this again on Sunday when we do the weekly forecast, just in case anybody watches this in the replay and thinks, I kind of wanted this, but I wasn't there for it, right? On Saturday when we have Astro Hour, I may offer an astrological reading as well. So if you have time, Saturday, 3 p.m. EST, make sure that you come back and that you join us to get a little bit of understanding about how to prepare for the full moon that takes place the next day, as well as looking at some of the other astrological transits that are going to be coming our way in early February, okay? I love you all. Thank you so much for indulging me. I hope that this conversation helped you to think a little bit differently, right? And also, when we see young adults make poor decisions, I know some people would argue that Shanice is not a young adult, being that she's in her 30s, but it's still kind of young, right? Hopefully, this gives you guys a lens through which to give them grace, as well as a lens through which to look at your own life, especially if things aren't going the way you want them to. If you've been feeling infantilized, really just reflecting and looking at certain patterns so that you can figure out ways to use your ancestral journey to break those patterns, to break those curses within your bloodline, right? I love you all. I'll see you Saturday. Be good, do good, take care of yourselves and others around you. And I will see you in a couple days. Bye.